Oh, hey guys. It is Mother's Day today, and for Mother's Day I was able to go with my mom to see a movie at the theater, the new Jungle Book movie, which I was pretty excited to see. She was more excited to see it than I was. Because, see, I've been seeing reviews of this movie, and to say that they've been mixed would be a pretty extreme understatement. A lot of people are saying it's an absolutely flawless movie. Others are saying it's completely overhyped, and let's just say I was more interested in seeing it so that I could form my own opinion on which of those things was true than I was actually interested in seeing the movie just to see it. That said, even though it is, 3 weeks late, I decided I would go ahead and make a review talking about the movie a little bit. Of course, I'm still in my temporary setup because I don't have a new tripod yet to go back to my original setup. That will be remedied as of tomorrow. I have a new tripod coming in the mail. And once I get that tripod, I will be able to start shooting reviews that are a little more professional and important than this one, including my next batch of Steven Universe reviews. I am still trying to get completely caught up on all my backlogged Steven Universe reviews before the end of the In Too Deep 4-week special event. My next review will be Rose's Scabbard, and hopefully I'll be able to get it done tomorrow. If not, I will definitely get it done for you guys Tuesday. All of that said, in crappy lighting, because I don't even have any natural lighting to supplement the lighting here in my bedroom since I am recording this at night. Let's talk a little bit about the new Jungle Book movie. And of course, if you know anything about this new movie, you know that it follows the basic layout of the original 1960s Disney movie rather than the structure of the book or stories, I guess. Like, isn't it more of a collection of short stories? I don't know. I haven't read much of it. I've read a few excerpts from the book, but that's really about it. But I have seen the original animated Disney movie several times. I am pretty familiar with it. It's actually pretty high up there on my list of favorite Disney animated movies. And all of that said, I do have a lot to say about this one, and it's probably not quite what you would expect. Now, before I say anything else, I do want to make it clear that I did enjoy this movie. I am glad that I went to see it. I enjoyed my experience with it for the most part. And to just get it out of the way, the positives that people have been noting for the most part are absolutely spot on. The scenery in this movie is gorgeous. The CG models on the computer-generated animals are excellent. There were times when I genuinely thought that they were some sort of really super high-detailed physical animatronics. They looked so real. They looked so much like they were actually there. And we moved on a little faster from the scenery than I really should have. The scenery in this was just perfect. It was beautiful. If I didn't know that this movie was filmed entirely on sound stages in California and that all of the scenery was done through CGI, I wouldn't believe it. Because there are scenes, for example, of Mowgli running through the trees and running along the jungle floor where the camera just kind of expertly tracks his movements. The directing in this was fabulous from scene to scene, but I'll get more into that in a second. Where he's just running along and it's just impossible to register that those trees, that jungle floor, that those things that you're seeing him run through and past and over and under aren't actually there. That's all computer generated. And if I'm not mistaken, they actually used some of the resources from Pixar to animate some of the scenery in this movie, and it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. And as I said, the direction from scene to scene is really, really good. There are some great scenes. Again, I'll use the example of Mowgli running through the trees. There are some great scenes of him running through the trees, of him running over and under things, where the camera just tracks him perfectly, where there's this real sense of movement, but everything is clear and concise, and you never lose track of what's happening. It was all done very, very well, but the overall pacing of the movie, I think, was a little off. The beginning seemed kind of rushed, then the middle part was long and drawn out, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but in contrast to how quick everything happened in the beginning, how fast one scene moved into the next, it just felt kind of jarring. And then the end kind of picked up again, and it just felt like the whole movie had just been stretched out in the middle. And that's probably more of a nitpick than a legitimate complaint, but it did bother me a little bit. There was also the issue of a few scenes in this movie that just felt like they didn't belong. Some slight reworking, and I think they would have worked a lot better. For example, there's a certain herd of large animals, I'm not going to say what they are, but it feels like a certain scene where they are first introduced into the movie was entirely superfluous and didn't need to be there. But it was only included in this movie because it was included in the animated movie, and they wanted that particular scene to be in this movie somehow. And we see these same animals again a couple more times. They have a pretty big role later on in the story. And I can't help but feeling like those other times that we saw them would have been perfectly fine without that beginning introductory scene, which was literally just like 5 minutes of exposition. It was kind of a drive-by scene. It was there, and then it was gone, and it left you riddled with exposition holes. That analogy kind of fell apart there at the end, but you get my point. There was also one character in this movie that I just could not stand the way that they portrayed him here, and this is going to be a minor spoiler, so I apologize if you wanted this review to be absolutely spoiler-free, but I promise this has nothing to do with the story of the movie. It's the character of King Louie, who in the original was an orangutan. Here he is a Gigantopithecus, which is actually a really cool change. Here he is played by Christopher Walken, and he is played up more as an intimidating character, as opposed to how he was in the original animated movie, where he was kind of vaguely threatening and menacing, but ultimately harmless. Here they genuinely want you to feel like this character's presence is menacing, and then he starts kind of spoken word singing a song out of nowhere. And we had one song in the movie already, but it made sense in the context of the movie. Here he just randomly starts singing, and he did absolutely nothing to vary his voice so that he didn't sound like Christopher Walken reading his lines off of cue cards. And I know a lot of people really loved him in this movie. I'm not completely out of touch. I know about all the Christopher Walken memes. They're cute. I like them. But overall, I'm kind of indifferent to Christopher Walken as a performer, and this didn't do anything to change my mind. There was also Bill Murray as Baloo, Baloo being one of my favorite animated characters of all time. And I'm not going to say his voice acting was bad here, but I definitely had to warm up to it. There was definitely some indifference in the earlier scenes with Baloo that made it hard to become engaged with the character, but that eventually worked its way out of the characterization, and it kind of makes sense why he was sort of indifferent in his performance starting out. So I don't think it's really an issue. It's just I didn't like his performance starting out, and it had to grow on me as the movie continued. The other voices were great. All of the wolves that raised Mowgli and helped take care of Mowgli were excellent. Ben Kingsley as Bagheera was great. Idris Elba as Shere Khan was fantastic. Shere Khan was a great villain in this. He had so much presence and was just so menacing. There are a couple of scenes where I was genuinely terrified of this character. Scarlett Johansson as Kaa wasn't even that bad. I was a little worried that hearing her voice coming out of a snake would take me out of the movie, but it surprisingly worked really, really well. I wish that Kaa's scene had been handled a little differently, because again, it was just this really quick, exposition-heavy scene that I feel like could have been handled better, but it was still enjoyable enough. I still found her performance enjoyable enough. I liked it. And Neil Sethi, I think is how you pronounce his name, as Mowgli, this actor who has literally only been in one short film before this and has hardly ever acted at all in front of a camera like this, did a magnificent job. Now, his performance was not perfect. I'm not going to say it was, but considering that he was on sound stages that vaguely resembled the jungle and talking to puppets which vaguely resembled the final CG characters, considering how little he actually had to work off of during the production of this movie, I am blown away by how well this kid was able to do. He's only, I think, 13 or 14 years old now. He was, I think, 11 when the movie started filming. This is a young kid who has very little professional acting experience, and so his performance was still far more than adequate. It really impressed me. But unfortunately, with the pacing issues and the few issues with the voice acting and the few scenes that I felt like just didn't integrate well into the movie, I'm having trouble saying that it's as good as a lot of people seem to think it is. But I definitely don't think it's that bad. On my scale, I give this movie somewhere around a 6.5 or 7, which is pretty significantly above average. Enough so that I definitely think this movie is a win and that you should check it out. Now, I'll come right out and say it. I did see this movie in 3D. Despite my better judgment, I really don't like 3D. It gives me headaches. But that was the time that we were able to get there. And I will say, seeing this movie in 3D is absolutely not necessary. The only times that I really noticed the 3D were times when it actually distracted me from the movie. Now, maybe it'll be different for you, but if you're someone who doesn't like it or who is pretty indifferent to it, keep that in mind. That said, guys, if you have seen this movie, what did you think of it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. More reviews coming soon. More reviews of Steven Universe specifically. Just letting you guys know, because I've been having people ask me. They are coming. There's no need to worry about it. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.